Ebenezer Church and Cemetery. Located approximately 70 kilometres northwest of Sydney, near the township of Windsor, is the small but very historic town of Ebenezer, not to be confused with Scrooge. This Ebenezer was a name from the Bible, and its founders were a group of families who were originally from Scotland and immigrated to Australia from London, that arrived by a ship Coromandel in 1802. They were given free passage and 100 acres grants to entice them to come to Australia. Originally, James Main, their pastor, met them under a large gum tree where they worshipped until the church was built across the road in 1809. The gum tree still remains, although mainly a stump now, but can still be viewed across the road. By 1803, they were starting the work of a stone church and had succeeded by 1809, using volunteers and at a cost of £400. It was the first Presbyterian church and now the oldest church building in Australia still standing. Built mostly by Lewis Jones, David Dunstan, Andrew Johnson and George Hall. It is said that the stone that was used to build the church was brought across the Hawkesbury River via bulls from Bungool Quarry. Wood for the church was provided by Samuel, Fry and Thompson, farmers that were paid in bushels and pork. It was a real community effort. A description of Ebenezer Church at its centenary by J.C.L. Fitzpatrick, who was a journalist and politician. The old church of Ebenezer is before us, a humble little structure enough, yet despite its homely masonry and small proportions, wearing a quaint and time-worn look withal, as we with our 100 years of national existence rate time which invests it with an interest all its own. Built of greyish stone, it is about 40 feet by 15 feet in length and about 11 feet to the eaves of the low slatted roof, which has replaced the original shingles, and with 4 windows of 18 small panes on each side, but none on either end. These windows are not at all placed at regular distances from each other, for between each pair is a wide gap. One's filled on the eastern side by a door, now blocked and overspread by the branches of a lemon tree. Nothing on the western side to break the curiously disproportioned effect given to it by irregularity, an irregularity traceable to the circumstance that the building at first served a double purpose, the northern end being used as the church and the southern end being partitioned off for the school and schoolmasters' residence. With a staircase and room above, the partition now removed and the whole space thrown into the church, the straight-bowed old-school door admitting into an interior as unpretentious as the outside world would lead us to expect. At one glance we take in the whitewashed camp ceiling roof and walls, the glazed windows, the rough, undressed, narrow wooden pews, the old-fashioned square ones, flanking the small pulpit with its flight of steps covered with faded carpet, crimson trappings and yellow fringes that are faded also. The plain communion table, the kerosene lamp hanging from iron brackets, upheld by cedar poles. But knowing that the primitive little place has an individual history not without its touch of pathos, we look round on all with interest. Initially, the first and oldest church was St. Philip's, built in 1793, made of daub and wattle, which is the making of a structure using materials found in the local environment, such as branches and twigs, woven together to create a wall, and then using clay and mud to solidify it. It was not a very effective building material, as many built this way, mainly some Sydney huts, were very damaged by the harsh Sydney weather. Although St. Philip's in Sydney was built before Ebenezer, it was built by convicts, and it was also burnt down by convicts and rebuilt in 1810. But this was a year after Ebenezer now. So therefore, Ebenezer holds the record of being the oldest church in Australia, still standing. Once built, the church doubled as a chapel and schoolhouse until a school was built some 70 years later. And again, when the school that was newly built was burnt down, they used the church again to house the school until a new one was built in 1902. This new public school still exists today, as does the worshipping at the church. Ebenezer Church is Australia's oldest existing church today. It has been heritage listed and will be viewable for many generations to come. Built by Scottish settlers and from donations and volunteers, originally Presbyterian, then allowing other denominations to worship at the church. Next to the church, a schoolmaster's residence was built in 1817, in the same material and style that was popular to the Scottish settlers at the time. The first person buried on the grounds was in 1812. The coffins were brought to the cemetery by boat, up the Hawkesbury River, followed by mourners in other boats. The church sits high upon a hill overlooking the Hawkesbury River below. The grounds are very lovely and well maintained, and there's a kiosk that's also a museum full of historical memorabilia, as well as some homemade preserves and souvenirs if you'd like to go in and have a look. There's also a seated area outside when we're not in lockdown that you can sit down and take in the wonderful view. The street on which the cemetery is located was named after the ship that brought the first settlers in 1802, the Coromandel. Many of the original settlers' descendants still worship at the church today and are buried in the cemetery grounds. Surrounded by many gum trees, and the tranquility of the river gives you a sense of what life would have been like in the early days of Australia. It's definitely worth a look, as there is so much history here. There was a book brought by Henry Parkes to Australia in 1839, full of poems by Thomas Campbell. It is said that he wrote a particular poem while watching the departure of the Coromandel on the 4th of February 1802. It was also said that the memory of the departure was stuck in his mind, and that is the reason he wrote the poem. The poem begins, "On England's shore I saw a pensive band, with sails unfurled for earth's remotest strand, like children parting from a mother, shed tears for the land to which they were not wed. Grief marked each face receding from the view, 'twas grief to nature, honourable and true. And long, poor wanderers, o'er the elliptic deep, the song that names but home shall make you weep. Oft shall ye fold your flocks by stars above, in that fore-world, and miss the stars ye love, to see a world from shadows forests won, in youthful beauty wedded to the sun. To skirt your home with harvest wildly sown, and call the blooming landscape all your own. Our children's heritage in prospect long, these are the hopes, high-minded hopes and strong, that beckons England's wanderers o'er the brine to realms where southern constellations shine. There marking o'er his farm's expanding ring, new fleeces ripen and new fruits upspring. The grey-haired swain, his grandchild sporting round, shall walk at eve his little empire's bound. Delightful land in wilderness ever bine, the glorious past is ours, the future thrine. As in a cradled Hercules we trace the life's empire in thine infant face. What spacious cities with their spires shall gleam, where now the kangaroo laps a lonely stream. Of states with laws from Gothic bondage bursts, and creeds by chartered priesthood unaccursed. Unborn the hands, but born they are to be, fair Australia that shall give to thee proud temple domes with galleries high, so vast in space, so just in symmetry, they winded to the contemplating eye, with colonnaded aisles in long array, and windows that enrich the food of day, with niched statues breathing golden air. Meanwhile, our arts triumphant reach their goal. How blessed the years of pastoral life shall roll. E'en should some wayward hour the settler's mind brood sad on scenes for ever left behind, Go forth and prosper the empire's band. May he who in the hollows of his hand the ocean holds and rules the whirlwind sweep, assuage its wrath and guide you on the deep. A beautiful place to soak up Australian history on the banks of the tranquil Hawkesbury River. Surrounded by gum trees, you forget that you are actually in a cemetery at all. With the sounds of Australian birds and a couple of ducks, we notice an old long-drop dunny, or toilet, of days gone by. We do hope it's not still in use. As well as the ruins of an old bread oven that tells of a time before local bread shops and grocery stores. It is known that the schoolmaster lived on the grounds, but also some of the students that lived at a distance were staying on these grounds. Therefore, a bread oven was needed, as in these days bread was a real staple for these people. When we are able to move around again more freely and lockdowns are over in Sydney, we will come back to Ebenezer Cemetery and do a night explore and paranormal investigation. As we walked around here, we thought we captured something in one of the windows and feel it definitely requires some more investigating. Pareidolia or paranormal, it is still a thrill to check out these old historic places, both for the insight into how things were when the settlers first came to Australia, but also because they may decide to tell us for themselves. Thank you for watching. Check out our other clips on YouTube, as well as like and subscribe to be notified of anything new.
Aussie made.